Welcome back to KCIM Sports Rewind. It's John Ryan with you here on KCIM 95.1 FM, 1380 AM. We got a packed house here, Jeff.
We do. Don't know if we've had this many people in the studio for a while.
Very rarely. Honnold not here this morning, but instead we have three people to take up his airtime this morning.
Yes.
So that's how much he demands week in and week out. We're talking about the Carroll Carnel Wrestling program, and this is something, Jeff, you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got three guys in here, Dan Drake, Brian Kuhlman, and Steve Clucky, who help out with that program, and they've been doing it, I think they said now, for 7 years, and we haven't had a chance to get them in here, but one of the things that we'll talk with them about is the benefits that you're seeing in the high school wrestling teams with the kids that are coming up through this program at Kemper, at Carroll, and some of the surrounding communities as well. So these guys do a great job. We hit on wrestling during the wrestling season. You know, we had Alex Schmitz from Kemper, who's wrestling up at Morningside on the program a year or so ago, but we really wanted to take some time here today to kind of focus on what these guys have been doing and what they're going to continue, I'm sure, to do.
Yeah, Dan Drake, Brian Kuhlman, and Steve Clucky here with us. And first of all, guys, you're going to have to move up to the mics when you talk a little bit here, but quickly familiarize us with the Carroll Cardinal Wrestling program. Sumo quickly pushes it over to Dan for this one. Familiarize us, give us a little history of the program, why it started, when it started, and what kind of kids you're working with.
Okay. We started about 7 years ago, and it was just we've seen a big need in Carroll for youth wrestling. Coach Noggle actually is the one that first pushed me towards it and saying, hey, you guys need to start a private club. And so Steve and I start talking, and then we start talking to Sumo over here, and the next thing you know, it kind of snowballed from there. And 7 years later, we're still going at it. Before our youth thing started, before Carroll Cardinal started, there was only 18 kids out for wrestling. The last 7 years, we've had our registration's been over 100 kids every single year.
Impressive. That is terrific. So give us your guys' background in wrestling. You obviously have a passion for the sport.
I started wrestling when I was a very little kid, just like a lot of these kids do. And I started from Coon Rapids down in CRB, and I had a couple really good coaches that really inspired me my whole entire life, with Steve Cadwalder and Kurt Davis, and both of them are still involved in wrestling. Kurt Davis is over in Greene County now, but very inspiring for me to keep wrestling going, growing up with those two guys.
All right, Brian, give us your background in wrestling and why you're into this.
Actually, I just had a couple years high school experience, and just kind of stuck with it. I really like the sport. I like what it does for kids, the discipline that it teaches them, and the hard work that it teaches them. So, not a lot of real wrestling experience, but I do love it. I do study it. I do watch it constantly. So, that's my background.
Yeah. Steve, how about you? Give us your background in wrestling.
I started when I was younger, probably third, fourth grade. Didn't go out in high school till I was a senior. I had bad knees and stuff, so not the best wrestler. I learned more being a coach than I was a wrestler, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, the sport of wrestling, Jeff, and I think you'll agree, the discipline it takes to be a wrestler, and a good wrestler, is incredible. Talk about that.
It takes a lot of work. I mean, I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, I think. So,
Brian, talk about that. And once again, you said you kind of studied it a lot. You know, what is it about the sport of wrestling? I mean, the discipline aspect of it.
Well, you really notice it now. My son's a sophomore, has cut a lot of weight, and just the weight management, the time management, the amount of effort that they're putting in, 2 hours after school every day for practices, and then he's coming home and he's got to watch what he's eating, still has to do his studies, and things like that. So it's when they get to the high school level, it's time management, it's weight management, it's and the discipline and the hard work. I mean, you see some of these kids going out there and they're trying their hardest, and so is their opponent. So it's mano a mano, if you want to, if you want to call it that, but it's just it's like Steve said, it's a lot of hard work, and you really notice it more as a coach and a parent than what you did as a wrestler.
Yeah,
I think.
Dan, let's talk about that, because not all that sounds fun. So, what is it that appeals to kids? How did you grow this club?
And it is, John, you're right. It's not always fun. It's a lot of hard work. I think what really appeals to the sport and the kids that actually stick with it and do it, they see all this hard work and all this not such fun things and then all of a sudden you start winning and you start doing things by yourself, and you can't point to another guy and say he helped, he did this or I did it. It's all me. I did it. And a lot of these kids, when they first started, didn't know how to even tie their wrestling shoes. And now we just had Kieran Polking just won the national title this weekend down in Des Moines. I mean, so when you put all that stuff together, from coming at ground zero to actually winning a national title or a state title or placing very high at these things, that's really self-rewarding because you did it. And I think that's really appealing to the kids that stick with it.
And Dan, that's one of the things that really jumps out for me with what you guys have done with this wrestling program is the amount of kids that you're now taking to some of these major tournaments and the success that wrestlers in this area are starting to have, not just at the little kid level, but at the high school level as well.
Yes. When we started this program, we were pretty much locally based as far as tournaments. We just go to the little ones around here, and then quickly we found out our kids are responding really well to our practices, and we just start leveling up our practices and getting harder and harder. And next thing you know, we're traveling all over the Midwest. I've been for wrestling, for youth wrestling, I've been to Las Vegas, I've been to Minneapolis, I've been to Indianapolis. We've been all over. And these kids just keep following us. And the higher we raise the bar, the more they go, the more they're doing stuff. And you can really see that on the high school end. We started when the senior class right now is in 6th grade. And you can really see the kids coming into high school right now that have Carroll Cardinal experience. They're just at a different level right now than everybody else. Parker Clucky, he just graduated or just got done with his senior year, placed 8th at the state tournament. Those guys have just barely had time with us.
I talked about the climb of the club. Obviously, kids talk to other kids and got them into the club. And maybe Brian and Steve, you can talk about this. When did you? Talk about the progression. About you got more and more kids every single year. When did you realize that you had something special going on?
Right when we started it, we knew we had something special. That first group we had, like you said, they're now seniors. But it's word of mouth, kids talking to their friends and convincing their friends that maybe they're not basketball players and hey, try this and things like that. So I think that's where a lot of our growth came from was, kids and other kids seeing some of their friends having success on the wrestling mat. Well, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'm not a basketball player. Maybe wrestling is something that I do like. And I think for the most part, once we get them in the room, they stay. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've had a lot of regression or kids. There's some that'll come out for a year or two and then say, nah, maybe not. But for the most part, I think the kids that start stick with it. And they're still in the program 2, 3, 4, and 5 years later and things like that. So,
Steve, I think the one unique thing about wrestling, too, is you're taking on kids your size. I mean, basketball, it's easy. You could be mismatched, a kid that's 5 inches taller,
right.
and you've got no chance. But in wrestling, you've got that opportunity.
Yep, that's what's we do some duels, which is pretty cool, because then we can set up by weight, age, and experience level. So we've got some kids that can barely tie their shoes, and we can put them against another kid at the same level at some of these duels, and they can get some great matches and experience. So then, we don't want them to go out there and get pinned in 30 seconds, and then they don't want to do the sport anymore. That's why it's hard to send them to some of the tournaments. Like, when you don't have good experience, you draw back. That's why these duels are so good for things like that. So.
And one of the things, guys, that you guys are really focused on is, we talked about this before the show, kind of teaching the kids the basic fundamentals, the holds, the moves, kind of how to counter things. It's really breaking the sport down and teaching the kids at a young level how to wrestle and how to do it the right way. And I think that's the thing that's really exciting about what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, you're totally right. And the neat thing about it now is we started early with the fundamentals, and we keep bringing that through. And now I'm helping out coaching high school wrestling right now at Carroll High with Coach Noggle. And Taylor Berger's back in the area now. And he wrestled for you and I for 4 years, state champ here in town. And now incorporating with Noggle and Taylor and getting everything exactly how we want it in high school, preparing these kids, is making it so much easier when they get to high school and junior high, because they already know exactly how we want them to do things. It's a whole community area-based thing. Even over at Kemper, Gary Smith comes in a lot and helps out, and we're building these kids to do exactly what we want in high school, so you don't have to teach them as much fundamentals. When you get to high school, we can hit the road running and really do some high level stuff.
And wrestling helps out in so many other sports as well. You talk to college football coaches; they want guys for specific positions. A lot of times, linemen, linebackers, stuff like that wrestled in high school because tackling just the base and the platform and the balance and everything that wrestling teaches is huge.
Yeah, especially for linemen out there, you don't want to get close to a wrestler, man. They'll take you down to nothing flat. So,
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, if you go back and look at articles or talk to coaches' interviews and listen to their interviews, they're always looking for the wrestlers.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think numerous coaches, Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa State guys and Nebraska guys, even they come in and that's one of their first questions: what other sports do they play?
Yep.
And I know you're a big proponent of it too, of multiple sport athletes, and I know it's not always that, but it helps a lot just to get better at each sport, and then that does parlay into being better in the next sport.
Yeah, and I was going to say I was at regional volleyball tournaments down at Des Moines this past weekend and watching some of the teams I helped coach play and was talking to several college coaches down there. And when I was talking to them about recruiting, that was the first thing that they say they always ask is how many sports do you play? What other activities are you involved in? That's the type of kids that they're looking at. But I did want to bring up a quick story for you guys when you talk about, wrestling and other sports. They didn't have wrestling where I went to high school, so I wasn't, involved in it. But I played basketball, and I was pretty decent. But I remember when I was...
So he says.
Yes, but after I got
Nobody's actually seen him play, by the way.
After I got out of college, I was talking to Trevor Vanami, and he wrestled years ago over at Ogden, and he was a really good wrestler over there, and I worked with him. And I said, everybody always said when I was around the farm all the time as a kid, so even though I was 118 pounds then, I was fairly strong for my size, and I'm like, everybody thought I would be a good wrestler, and he's like, no, you wouldn't have been able to do it. And I'm like, oh, I bet you I could hang with you for a little while. He had me down on the ground, and I was tapping out in less than 6 seconds. I'll just tell you that.
You guys have put your club to the test a lot of times in these meets you go travel to, but that takes a lot of support from parents too, doesn't it? I mean, you guys got to have that support.
I
if
think
it's not there.
That's one of the biggest deals too with the group that we kind of have, the older group. They bought into what we were selling. So then and I think that's where we're at now. Some of our younger groups are a little bit smaller. I think we've got to get them back to where they're buying into what we're selling, or to believe it, or the groups that love, like, that are going to be like, yeah, we're going to join this, and then they get involved. I mean,
and it's truly a family atmosphere with us. I mean, we hang out on the weekends. I mean, this club grew way more into just being wrestling. We have so many friends now and family members, it seems like, that we just, everywhere we go, and it doesn't matter if it's wrestling now in the summer, we're hanging out all the time. We just go to everybody's houses. It's just a big family atmosphere all the time with the Cardinals.
A typical Carroll deal of getting together to
Let's get the microphone over to you here. So.
A typical Carroll deal of getting family together and drinking and having fun, and the kids are doing stuff. I mean, that's kind of how this works, I think. So,
guys, when does your season run? When does the Cardinal season run? What's the length of it? Year round?
we start wrestling for the Cardinals before the high school, or about the same week as high school, and we're just got done this weekend. So we went past high school, and we're only practicing 2 times a week most of the time. But so it's a long season, and then we got some kids that are going to try some freestyle and do some freestyle, like Dan's boy and stuff. So, I mean, it can be an all-year deal if you want it to be. So
now, anybody out there listening, a parent that wants to get their child in it, their kids showing an interest in it, how do they get involved with the Carroll Cardinals? Who do they need to get in contact with? What do they need to do?
We send out the sign-up sheets to the teachers, to both schools, and look us up on Facebook. That's probably the easiest. We got Carroll Carnel Wrestling Club on Facebook. That's our main communication with everybody and stuff. So that would be the one, or get a hold of one of us three or whatever. So we'll try to answer the questions.
Kindergarten through 8th grade. That's what's so cool about this program, Jeff, is they do all the different ages. Steve, I understand you do the kindergartners. Can you send us video of your practice sometime? Because I think it would be hilarious.
There might be some parents that have some of that. That's what I said. I don't know how I drew the short straw of this when we started to get the kindergarten, because I don't have a lot of patience. But
it's got to be like herding cats a little bit, doesn't it?
It seems like you just put it away and you do it. So I guess if you like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is.
So what do you guys get out of this? What do you guys get personally out of this? Steve, we'll start with you.
I got 3 kids in it, so that's my benefit.
It's a chance to share with your kids, yeah. Brian, how about you?
Yeah, I think what Steve said. I have a son that's gone through the Cardinals program, is now a sophomore at Carroll High. But for me, it's the fun atmosphere. There's nothing better than going to a gym on a Saturday and spending. It sounds funny, but spending 6-8 hours there with a group of 20 or 30 kids and watching them have fun and make new friends and it's crazy. Like Dan said, it's a family thing, but they make friends from wherever. I mean, you go to these tournaments, you see the same kids a lot, and they start hanging out, and all of a sudden they're good friends with somebody from Panora or somebody from Council Bluffs and things like that, and it turns into a great thing for not only us but for everybody that's involved.
How about you, Dan? What do you get out of those?
Well, when I originally started out, just like these guys, I had a son in it, and now he's in high school. But really what it transformed to me is getting out of it is seeing kids progress through the sport. We had kids, and like I said, they have a hard time tying their shoe, and the next thing you know, they're jumping in your arms because they placed at the state tournament or they won a national title. Things like that, I just can't replace now. I just want to keep doing that over and over and over. Those moments where somebody accomplished something that they've been dreaming and working so hard, that's what motivates me and keeps me going. These kids, now being around them all the time, I just don't want to let them down, so we just keep going. We just keep going and just keep making new plateaus, and that's, I guess, what I really get out of it is just seeing these kids accomplish so many things. Dan Drake, Brian Kuhlman, Steve Clucky joining us here this morning. Jeff, it'd be nice to see all the weight classes filled every time we go out to cover a wrestling match.
I think what these guys are doing is going to help with that. It is tough sometimes when you go to cover a wrestling meet and you sit there through a try and you get, there's been nights where I've had 8 matches throughout the entire night because of all of the, the forfeits and everything else. So with what these guys are doing, I think they're going to build the sport back to where you'll get to go and you'll get to watch really great wrestling all night long. So I thank these guys for what they're doing. Absolutely. Look on Facebook. Just look for Carroll Cardinals. Is that what we look for? Yep. And you can get more information about how to get your child involved with it. Carroll Cardinal is a great program here locally. Welcome back to KCIM Rewind here on 1380 AM, 95.1 FM KCIM. Jeff Blankman joined today by a very special guest, Haley Birks, the former South Central Calhoun Titan, and now I guess I have to call you a former Northwestern Red Raider, wrapping up her playing career, but I guess you haven't graduated yet, so you're still probably a Northwestern Red Raider, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I still am a Raider. Probably now you could call me a former basketball player, but that's all right.
I had to ask because I interviewed Sam Brinks here a couple of weeks ago, and I called him a Hawkeye, and he said, Jeff, I'm now a former Hawkeye because my playing career's done. So I wasn't for sure how that all worked. But, Haley, we appreciate you joining us here today. I know things are very busy for you as you're wrapping up that college career, graduating in May, correct?
Yes, definitely going to graduate in May. And then I'll be on to the real world.
and we'll talk about that. Going to be teaching in Lamar's here coming up in the fall, so we congratulate you on that. But let's talk about basketball. You and your team made a great run this year all the way to the semifinals, the Final Four up in Sioux City of the NAIA Division II women's tournament. Great season for you guys and a great run through the tournament. Did the season play out kind of the way you expected it, or what were your thoughts coming into the year?
I think I kind of had mixed feelings since we made it to the Final Four last year. That was a really fun experience. And so I knew that we wanted to be there again. But since we lost Renee and Paige last year, we were going to have some big shoes to fill, especially with that point guard. And so then we had just a guard filling in that spot as well as a freshman point guard. And so it was a very big learning experience for me. And I definitely had to use a lot more patience at the beginning of the season just because it was the people filling that role, and I was so used to what we had last year. And so I definitely, going into the season, did not expect us to do as well as we did. And then we kind of got playing some games, and we were winning. They were winning some more games, and then my mindset kind of changed a lot more. And then I did a lot of comparison, whether I thought we were better this year or last year, but we just played so much different. And so then I think that helped us in the long run, too, even though we were not as strong in the point guard area, but it was still really good. And then we made it back to the Final Four, which was awesome to end on.
So when did you realize that this team had a chance to make another run like that? Was it early in the season, or did it take to the middle or later part of the year?
I would say it was probably pretty early. I would say before Christmas, because we had won, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 games at least. And so we were doing really well. And so I think any negative thoughts I had on the season were definitely eliminated. And then I knew that it was definitely going to turn out well for us.
Did you put any additional pressure on yourself this year, being a senior and knowing that you'd need to be one of those leaders?
I don't think so. When I was a sophomore, there was only 2 juniors and then 1 senior, and then I had started varsity my freshman year too. And so I kind of was just already thrown into a leadership position that year. And then last year I started again, and then we just had 2 seniors and then the 3 of us juniors. And so for a while now, I've kind of been in that position. And so it was a pretty comfortable transition to make that. And yeah, so by the time I got to this year, I was pretty comfortable doing that.
And if I remember correctly, your teammates have kind of called you Mom over the last few years, right? So has that role changed at all?
No, not really. I think I don't know, something about me. I guess I have a motherly presence, but even my students at school have said that about me. But yeah, I just kind of took on the role as like the team mom, and I mean, I always had extra stuff and was thinking of things that nobody else would have thought of. And I definitely would say I give credit to my mom for that, because she obviously instilled all that knowledge into me. But yeah, they definitely did call me the mom.
So as the mom of the team, what did you feel like your role was with this year's team?
I think just being patient and answering questions that especially the freshmen had, and just letting them know about things that I know when I was a freshman nobody told me about and I wish I would have known. And so then just being someone that can serve as like a role model for them and somebody that they could go to anytime they needed something. And so, yeah, that worked out pretty well.
You guys play in the GPAC, and it's known around the nation that that's by far the toughest conference in the country when it comes to that level of the NAIA. What is it about the GPAC where this conference is so deep, and every year you can expect maybe 2 to at least 3, maybe even 4 teams getting into the Final Four out of that conference?
Yeah, it's such a tough conference, and I think just Midwest basketball in general is pretty good, and all of the teams get so many good recruits from this area, and a lot of people stay local. You don't see a lot of players coming from the East or West Coast trying to play. Like, they all come from this area, and then you just have really good coaches that have been there a long time. And then as you are playing against really good competition night in and out, by the time you get to nationals, it just seems like another game in the GPAC because you've done that all season. And so then it really doesn't feel like you're playing at the national tournament against a lot of really good teams because you've been doing it all year. So, yeah, and by the time we got to the Final Four, there was 3 of us from our conference, and we started out with 6 of us at nationals. And so that's just pretty impressive in itself. So it was really good.
How much do you love having that tournament at Sioux City at the Tyson Event Center? It's just a great arena to hold it at, I think.
It is. I mean, at first I was a little disappointed because all of the track and whatever get to go to Tennessee and Florida and all that. And that kind of sounded like fun to me when it was snowing here. But then just we get such a big crowd since we're local, and we watch games where it's a Florida team and a California team playing together, and it's just dead in there, and there's no fans. And so just to be close and to be able to have people there supporting us makes a big difference, and I really enjoy that. But yeah, it's a pretty awesome atmosphere.
You kind of mentioned how a lot of the kids up there at Northwestern and throughout the GPAC are kind of local kids, Northwest Iowa, kind of the South Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska area. But it seems like it started maybe with Paige Danner, who you mentioned here a little bit ago, a senior last year, and then you. There's been kind of an influx of kids from our area going up to the GPAC and especially Northwestern over really the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely been a lot more people coming to here and to Dort as well, and I would say a lot of that's probably giving credit to all the media and the papers and stuff back from that area because Northwestern's name is getting out there, and then we just had so much more success recently, and so then it's just kind of opening the eyes of younger players who are interested in college basketball, and the NAIA is a great division to play in. Like, it's not NCAA D1, but it is a lot of fun, and I think a lot more players should consider that as an option.
It's a really good brand of basketball. How much do you talk to other athletes and players from this area? I know Maddie Jones and Emily Danner out of this area heading up to Northwestern. You got Heidi Hammond going to, on the girls' side of things, going to Dort to play basketball. Taylor Huska from ESAC going to Midland University. So that kind of that rush of kids from this area still going there. How much do you talk to the kids back here about what it's like to play in that league?
I mean, a lot of times Coach will have us kind of reach out to people that we know or might be interested, just because I know when I was getting recruited, it just means so much more when it's coming from a player instead of the coach, just like you can relate better on a personal level. And so I would try and reach out to Maddie, especially because I know she was interested. And then she came on a visit and we ate together. And so I got to kind of talk with their family quite a bit about the Northwestern experience. And yeah, I just think, I don't know, they see me enjoying it. And so then I think that's kind of obviously appealing because they know that it's a good school and they could probably relate there well too.
Let's talk a little bit about that Final Four run this year. You guys made a great run through the tournament, kind of had a scare, if I remember right, in the round of 8 to get into the Final Four, had to come back. But talk about this year's run through the tournament and how special it was for you, especially being the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was kind of a unique situation, whereas for the other 3 teams that made the Final Four, they didn't have a whole lot of close games, whereas every single one of ours was close. And so that just makes it so much more exciting, I would say. And then, you really deserve to be there at that point. So, yeah, we had a lot of close games, but then just getting to spend a whole week in Sioux City with my teammates and coaches and friends and all that, it's so much fun. And just, yeah, we'll definitely remember more of what happened off the court than on the court, but it's all about making memories and making the most out of all the opportunities.
You guys ended up falling to Concordia in a great semifinal round game. Got down early, came back, had a lead late, but they were able to squeeze down. Then they go on to win the championship. How much did that make it hurt a little less, maybe, that they won the title, or did it still hurt just as much?
I kind of had mixed feelings about that, too. It was good to see a GPAC school win, and especially them. Their team they have really good, nice players, and their coach is a really good guy, too. And so to see them win, they definitely deserved it, and they were really good. But then just to kind of think about, if that was us, we probably could have beat Southeastern, and we could have won, but that's all right.
Haley, you're in the second half, kind of winding down now the senior year. You're in the second half really of the second semester, so you're kind of busy out doing a little teaching. Take us through what's a normal day right now, and what do you got to do through the rest of this semester up until graduation?
Well, right now I usually get up and then drive to school, and one of my roommates is at the same place as I am, and so we get to ride together, so that's kind of fun. And then I'm in 4th grade at Rock Valley, and so we just started that one last week and had a couple days in. And so just right now learning all the kids' names and learning the schedules and stuff will be the first part. And then eventually I'll transition into teaching different lessons there. And at some point I'll be in charge of the class completely. And so that's just kind of a nice experience to have because it's like having my own classroom. So, yeah, I have 8 weeks of that, and that'll take me right up to graduation, and then I'll be done.
You gave your mom the credit for you being called mom on the team. Do you give your dad the credit for you wanting to be a teacher, or who was it that kind of got you interested in becoming a teacher?
I'm not really sure. I think probably having my dad as a teacher kind of sparked that idea in my brain, but ever since I was younger, I loved school, and I loved being at school. I loved everything about it. And so then when I bet I was in first or second grade, I would bring home extra worksheets that my teachers had printed off, and I would make my sister and brother do them. And I had set up this pretty awesome school in our basement, and I taught them for a long time, and then we moved to a new house, and I moved all the school stuff there in the basement, and so I taught them for a long time. And that's partially, I would take credit for why Allison is so smart.
I was just going to ask, are you going to take the credit for Allison and Jared being so successful in school?
Well, I mean, Allison was a good student, and I will admit, she is smarter than I am. So I would say, yes, I'm going to take credit for that. Jared, I mean, maybe. He never wanted to sit still. My mom always said I was frustrated that he was a bad student, but that's all right.
How much of the stuff that are you going to take with you that you used when you were teaching your little brother and little sister do you think you can use now as becoming a teacher at Lamar's next year?
I think just, I don't know, getting to spend time with kids, and even though it was my siblings, like, that probably made it, I know, a little more stressful for me as a second grader, but I definitely learned patience and working with kids. And they always say when you're teaching something, you learn it better than if you just were to read something yourself. And so, like, we always have a lot of students do something and then explain to somebody else how they got an answer or whatever. And so then I think for me as a second grader, I was doing my homework, but then I had to teach it to somebody else and explain how to do it. And so then I just think that thought process helped me out, and then definitely provide an example of what I should be doing when I'm teaching now.
Well, I tell you what, I know you had to learn patience trying to teach those too. So we congratulate you on the job that you did with Allison and Jared. Haley, going to be at Lamar's next year, middle school math. So are you going to be coaching anything with that, or just kind of take us through what the fall looks like for you and when you found out you'd be at Lamar's?
Well, last week, it was kind of a crazy week with finishing the Final Four, and then the next day I had an interview, and then I think it was the day after that or 2 days, I had a call already that they offered me the job, and so then I thought about it for a day and then accepted. So I'll be teaching 7th and 8th grade math, and then I also will be coaching 8th grade volleyball, and then just kind of serving as a volunteer assistant on the basketball team. So that'll be kind of fun.
Since you played college basketball, is that the long-term goal to be a head coach, or would volleyball fit for you because you were so great at volleyball in high school as well?
I would do either one, I would say. I enjoyed them both a lot. And, yeah, I definitely would say I'm more comfortable with basketball just because I've played it for so long and my dad was a coach. And so I've seen a lot more basketball, and that's basketball in my blood pretty much, but either one would be fine. I love them both.
So your philosophy is going to be similar to your dad then when you coach?
I would say so. Probably a combination of what he taught me and then the things we did in college, which they actually were pretty similar. So, yeah, that kind of style will be what I would go by.
Well, I tell you what, Haley, we congratulate you on a great career there at Northwestern. We know things are going to go well for you at Lamar's. Hopefully one of these years we'll be seeing you down there at the state tournament coaching on the sideline, so that would be pretty cool. But appreciate you joining us here today, and thanks for everything really over the last 8 years.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. You guys have been the best.
You bet. Again, Haley Birks again with the Northwestern Red Raiders, again, former South Central Calhoun Titan joining us here on Rewind. We'll be back to wrap things up coming up next.
As the athletes at your house prepare for hard work and fun of the season, remember that St. Anthony Rehab Services provides physical therapy for any sports injury that may sideline your member of the team. Sports injuries can plague kids of all ages and keep them from playing the sport they love. Athletes will be under the direct supervision of a certified and licensed healthcare professional in the newly renovated Sports Performance Facility. If an injury is keeping your athlete out of the game, call St. Anthony Rehabilitation Services at 794-5000 for sports injury and treatment rehab.
It is KCIM Sports Rewind. You've done it again, Blankman. You've gone way over time here. So
Yes.
All right.
I'll take the blame.
All right. I will gladly give you that blame.
We had some great guests today, though.
We did have great guests on today. We have two more here making their rewind appearance, their debut appearance is Chelsea and Jason from Johnston Communications helping us live stream this. So, yeah, you guys have been on a little bit. Chelsea, you came out and waved, but that's about it. So
we like to keep it behind the scenes.
Yeah, I like to keep that low profile going on back there.
I swear one of these times I'm going to sneak a camera in that gets them in that corner that they hide in over there.
Yeah, we're going to come to your office and live stream you guys for a while. But look for us on Johnston Communications Facebook page, the KCIM Facebook page as well, and our website, some clips like that. Also want to remind you that Matt Detlinger tonight, SDSU, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, they're the wrong team from South Dakota, but that's okay. They're going to be taking on Texas tonight in the NIT tournament, 8 o'clock on ESPN.
Absolutely. We wish Matt and them guys the best of luck coming up. He's had a great career so far up there, redshirted last year and now playing as a redshirt freshman up there and a big part of what they're doing. So been fun to watch them play this year.
Mike Dom's final game as a Jackrabbit, he's a double-double machine.
I don't know if it's going to be the final game yet.
Well, it's finally collegiate. Well, yeah, okay.
Because they're in the NIT as well.
His final tournament run. I hope they do. I hope they knock off Texas and go a very long way. So, but that's tonight, 8 o'clock to watch them on the ESPN. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's KCIM Sports Rewind for this week.